In this module, we're going to talk a little bit more about choosing a product to sell. You know, if you go back to some of the earlier modules where I told you how much money do you need to start this business, this is a major factor. If you go back a couple modules and you'll see the example where I did the walkthrough and I showed you exactly how to pick a product based on your budget, you always want to keep that in mind. So again, in case you missed that, I just want to reinforce it. I recommend you have at least 2.5 times your starting inventory cost as your initial investment. So if you have $5,000 is what your initial investment is to start this, you should be looking at a product that you can get into stock and stay in stock. That's crucial, stay in stock with an initial investment of $2,000. So always keep that in mind. But basically, once you've chosen a product, there's 7 critical steps to actually launching that product on Amazon. The first thing is you want to make sure that that product has demand within the Amazon marketplace. You know, there's a lot of times where you can get misled. You know, I was in China not too long ago, and we asked the Chinese sellers. We said, "Hey, how do you pick a product?" And they said they go to this very popular. It wasn't Helium 10, but a very popular tool to actually see what the demand is on Amazon, how things are selling. Not the demand, but how things are selling based on their BSR and estimated sales. Kind of like the X-ray tool is what they would use to figure that out. And then they would go and they read the reviews and see what how the reviews were bad or good, and then they go out and just find it for a cheaper price. But the problem with that, and that's what a lot of people teach, not only in China, but a lot of the courses and YouTube videos and stuff in the US teach as well, is to use that same methodology, and that's flawed because you don't know where those sales are coming from. Those are the sales that are on Amazon, and yeah, it may have a good BSR, and you may be going, wow, this is a great category. But you don't know, are those sales coming from within Amazon, or are those sales being some of those guys doing a lot of outside advertising? They're pushing from their own website into Amazon, or maybe they just got featured on a big television show, and a lot of people went to Amazon to buy the product. There's a lot of outside factors, so you got to be careful just using that information. You want to make sure there's actually keyword demand on Amazon. The next thing you got to do is you got to find your manufacturer, wherever they may be. They be in China or they be in the U.S. That's step 2. The next step. The next step in this process is to prepare your packaging. I recommend you always create custom packaging. Some people don't do that. They just put stuff in a poly bag and stick a label on it, and they're off to go. But I always recommend you actually spend a little bit of money on your packaging and actually create something unique. And then you're going to have to get your logo and your UPC code and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about that more later. Then you're going to place the next step. Step number 4 in the process is you have to place the order with the supplier. So you're going to actually issue a purchase order and place that order with the supplier. And we'll go into detail on that a little bit later too. Then you got to actually start doing your marketing and your optimization of your listing. You're going to create your listing, get your photos made, get all your copy written, get all your descriptions and everything on Amazon. That's the next step. The next step after that, step 6, is to get paid. Hopefully from Amazon, you've made some sales, and every 2 weeks you're getting some money. And then the last step is you just rinse and repeat this process by ordering more of the same product, or maybe you expand the product line or add additional products over time. That's the basic 7-step process to doing selling products on Amazon. Now, when you're evaluating products, you always want to take into consideration the competition that you're up against. And by using the X-ray tool and the black box tool and some of those tools on the Helium 10, you can actually get an idea, like we talked about in an earlier module, how many people are advertising on that product. You know, when you look at certain keywords or certain products, they'll actually show you how many people are running sponsored ads. That can give you an idea of the competitiveness. The more there are, the harder it's going to be to compete. I also like to make sure that I'm not really competing against big brands. Now, Amazon is a place where about 80% of the people don't actually care about the brand. They just want something that's at a good price and that solves their problem. But if you notice that when you're doing type in a keyword on Amazon and most of the results that come back for that keyword are big brands, that means it's going to be very difficult to compete, especially if those brands have a lot of keyword volume. So if you actually can go in and type in like Cuisinart or Nike or something like that, and that's who you're competing against, and people are actually searching by that brand name, the chances of you stealing some of their sales away is not real good because they already have raving fans. They already have people that are very loyal to them. So if there's a heavy brand dominance in a certain category, I might shy away from that in the beginning. Also, I like to make sure that I'm competing against mostly private label sellers. And what that means is that there's not multiple sellers on the account. If I go to a listing on Amazon and that listing says also available from these sellers, and I click on that and there's a whole bunch of other people. Sometimes you might see Amazon warehouse deals, that's okay. But because that's Amazon selling returned items that they've refunded you for that were damaged, or maybe they damaged it when it fell off a forklift or a robot ran over it in the warehouse or something like that. That's what they're selling. Those are okay. But anything besides that, if there's multiple sellers on that listing, that typically means it's not private label, and those are people that are going to be a little bit harder to compete against. Also, take a look and see if people are likely to be a private label seller or not. You can tell sometimes by the way they do their listing, the way they do their bullet points. If they take in one of these courses, they'll have the first 5 or 6 words all capitalized, or they'll have a bunch of different emojis. You can kind of tell a formatting, and this looks like it's a private label guy that took a course because there's a certain thing that they're doing. So I like to click into their storefront, where actually it'll say sold by, and you can click that button, and then you can go into their storefront by following the links. And I like to see if what they're selling there, if they're all selling the same stuff, or if they're selling a random collection of things. And so if there's a lot of private label sellers on the listing, that's not a bad thing. But if there's not very many of them, then that's actually a good thing, because usually you can actually compete really well against the people that aren't. Now, there's also, when I'm evaluating products, you also want to make sure that they're not on the restricted list. We talked about that in one of the other modules, and there's another handout in this module that has a list of some of the restricted products. You want to make sure they're not on the restricted list. And also, some products have to go through testing. So some products have to be go through, if it's electronics, it has to be UL certified. Other products have to go through certain lab tests, like if it has Bluetooth in it, it has to be Bluetooth certified. Now, sometimes your factories, especially if you're dealing in China, they'll say they have these certifications. Sometimes they're real and sometimes they're not real. So you always have to verify that they're actually a real certification. And you might have to do this on your own. Amazon's getting more and more picky on making sure some of these certifications are in place. They didn't used to be too picky. But especially if your product has anything that's flammable, and some things are flammable, like lipstick, for example, you wouldn't think it's flammable, but lipstick's flammable. So you have to have what's called an MSDS, which is a document that basically shows at what temperatures does this thing explode or melt or whatever. It has all these different parameters in it, and you have to get those documents. Usually your supplier can supply those for you, but if not, you're going to have that testing done, and Amazon will oftentimes require that. Other things that are hazmat, so some chemical type of stuff, Amazon sometimes doesn't want to carry that, or you gotta give some documents or go through a little test that Amazon makes you take that to show that you understand the consequences and how this thing has to be stored and all that kind of stuff. Now, the other thing you want to look for, there's some red flags in products as a new seller. Now, once you're an experienced seller, some of these things probably are okay. But if you're a brand new seller, you want to try to avoid anything that has glass, because glass, if it's not packed right, it breaks really easy. This stuff gets thrown around like footballs in the back of UPS trucks and stuff. And so unless you really know how to package the glass properly so that it doesn't break, I would avoid glass, because you may have a big issue, a lot of upset customers, and it could get a lot of negative reviews out of the gate, and it could hurt you. I would also avoid anything that has sharp edges. So anything that's got sharp edges just increases your liability risk and can cause potential problems for you. Now, some people say stay away from electrical stuff, because electrical stuff requires different certifications. Like I said, the Bluetooth or the UL, or in Europe it's called CE. I personally went ahead and did electrical stuff in the beginning because I thought I had certifications, and I did. But some people say it just complicates it. But I wouldn't say don't shy away from that. Just understand what you have to do, because there's great opportunities in electrical stuff. Things that require government approval, you want to stay away from those kinds of things. CBD oil, for example, government approval or illegal, actually. But like CBD oil is illegal in some states in the United States. In other states, it's perfectly fine. And whether it has THC or doesn't have THC, and there's all these different rules, it's a really hot product on Amazon. But Amazon really doesn't like to carry it because it's not okay across all 50 states. So you want to avoid some of those types of things. If you want to do something for CBD, sell the paraphernalia that's with it. But just understand that you might not be able to bid very successfully on the word CBD or anything that has any kind of illegal keywords or anything that Amazon has kind of like on the blacklist. Those things can be very difficult to actually to market. Also, I would stay away from closed categories in the beginning. Remember we talked about that in another module that require ungating or approval. I would try to avoid going into those as a beginner. Later on, those could be fine, but as a beginner, you just want to keep things a little bit more simple for you. Another thing is as a beginner, I don't recommend you do seasonal products. Seasonal products for like Halloween or Christmas or Easter or Valentine's, Mother's Day, those can be great opportunities, and there can be a lot of money made in those seasonal products. But because they're seasonal and you're a beginner, if you mess up on the inventory buy, you either buy too much or too little, you can hurt yourself. And so it's better to get a little bit of water under your feet selling on Amazon before you dive into seasonal. And once you've sold a few things that are not so seasonal, then if you want to get into seasonal, then go for it. But I don't recommend it as a beginner because it is a little bit tricky, and you can get burned really bad if you mess it up. The other thing is high risk or high liability products like hoverboards were really popular a few years ago on Amazon, and they started blowing up and having battery problems and stuff, and so Amazon banned them. So anything that's a really high risk or high liability, I would probably shy away from in the beginning. The other ones is I like to launch products that don't have a lot of variations, don't have a lot of parent-child relationships. And the variations, the reason I do that is because you don't know when you're first starting what are the best variations. Yeah, you can use the Helium 10 tool and look at the reviews and stuff and actually get an idea of which variations are selling better for your competition. But it just introduces more inventory up front. So if you're going to sell something that has a small size, a large size, and a medium size, that means you've got to kind of guess and spread your inventory out over those three. And you're not sure, maybe it's the medium that's going to outsell the large 3-1, but you don't know that. Or if you're doing colors, like you're doing makeup mirrors and you have a red one, a rose gold one, and a white one, I would probably not launch all of those at the same time. Pick one and go with it. And then later on, you can survey the customers or you can look at feedback or other what other people are selling and then add additional variations. But I would try not to do too many variations in the beginning because it can spread yourself and your money too thin. The other thing I would avoid is brand-driven products. Like I said earlier, if people are really typing in that brand name and looking for something by brand name, that can be a problem. Sometimes you'll find great opportunities on Amazon using like Helium 10. You're like, wow, this thing has got like 60,000 searches a month. There's 3 people selling this. Holy cow. This is going to be an awesome product to enter. But what you may not realize is maybe that product has a patent, and that's why there's hardly anybody searching on it. So you got to make sure that you always check and make sure there's not a patent by going to the trademarkia.com or Google Patents, like we talked about in an earlier module, or it's not licensed. Maybe there's a special license for that product, and that's why it's hard to sell. I would not sell licensed products. You can't just sell Disney products on Amazon without a special license. There may be people that will sell it to you, but you can't do that. So I would stay away from those. The other thing I would stay away from are products or search terms that have a lot of Chinese sellers. We'll talk about that in a later module, the whole mentality of the Chinese. But the Chinese sellers are cutthroat. And you can usually tell if it's a Chinese seller because the English is not so good. The pricing is like dirt cheap. It's maybe barely above what you could buy it for. They're usually things under $20, especially things under $15. A lot of them are selling in there. Those are just products that I just don't want to go into those. Those are really highly commoditized products that are really difficult. And products that have everything, let's say you have a makeup brush and you have a makeup brush set. And this makeup brush set's like 20 different makeup brushes. It's a really great set. And you're trying to rank for makeup brush or makeup brush set. And you look at page 1 of the search results, and maybe your makeup brush set needs to sell for $30. And it's a great makeup brush set, but everybody else that's on page 1 is selling their product for $5, and everybody's there. It's going to be very difficult for you to put your product into that spot. When I see search results and I see prices all over the place, I think one of the ones that was recently was that game where you take beanbags and you throw them into what's it called, cornhole or something like that, cornhole games. I was looking at that like a year ago, and the prices were all over the place. There was games for $10, and there's games for made out of wood for $150. The big price disparity tells me that there's a tremendous opportunity in that product, and that I can come in there at all kinds of different price ranges and probably actually have a good chance of staying on page one. Versus the makeup brush one, if my makeup brush set is $30, it's a really kick-ass brush set, but everybody on there is selling 2 brushes, 3 brushes for $5, $6, $7. My chances of staying on page one are really low. So I'm going to probably look for a different product or a different way to market that product. The other thing I look for is that out of the top results, out of the top 8 results, or top 10, 8 to 10 results, I want to make sure that at least half or less of those are less than 2 years old. Because if over half of those are over 2 years old, that means these people are kind of entrenched on Amazon. They've got the algorithm down in their favor, and it's going to be very difficult for me to come in and take some share away from them. So if there's, you can use the Helium 10 tool to actually show you how long something's been selling on Amazon, and you can actually, if it's been more than 2 years and half of them are over 2 years old, then that's something that you're going to definitely want to think twice about. Now, some good signs when I see that are like, oh my gosh, this could be a great opportunity. If there's only a few photos on the listing, you can use the black box tool and some of the Helium 10 tools to find listings that are selling well and only have like 1 or 2 photos, or maybe their bullet points are really bad or something, or the title's not optimized. Those are great opportunities where you can come in and you can do a better job and probably compete and maybe even beat them. If they're listed, their descriptions and their bullet points are just mediocre, they're really short, or they're not really filled out, they don't have EBC, but they're still selling pretty good, those are great opportunities too. Things that you can't get locally can be great too. If I can buy something locally, get in my car and go down to Walmart and get it right away, people will do that. But if there's something that's a little bit harder to get, it's a style or a size or a configuration of something that you just really can't get local, you got to go online to find it. Those are great opportunities. And another one is if I see something that's selling well that has really poor packaging, you can really stand out with the packaging. People eat with their eyes first. Even if you spend $1 on packaging, you can sometimes justify a $5 more price for selling the item. So something that has really bad packaging could be also a great opportunity for you. Just a few tips when you're choosing products. You want to focus on the existing demand within Amazon. Don't get tricked by when you pull up X-Ray and you just think, oh, right, this is a great category. I see people take screenshots of X-Ray and put that in the Facebook group and say, what do you think? And people will comment back. There's more to the story than that. You got to know, how are they driving those sales? You got to use like the Cerebro tool, like we're going to show you, and actually figure out how do they drive those sales? What are the keywords in the demand that's driving those sales? And that's something you can compete on. You can't just look on the surface level. That's a mistake that a lot of people make, and it gets them in a lot of trouble. You want to look for places where you can add value. So where you can read the reviews and you can see what people are complaining about or what they're saying they wish they had. And you can add value either by combining something with it or by modifying the product. Look for places that have low competition. So by using Cerebro and some of the other Helium 10 tools, you can actually see what the competition level is and how many people are ranking on different things, and go in where the competition is not so brutal at the beginning. And you always want to think different. You always want to think outside the box. You don't want to go cookie cutter formula. Otherwise, it's just a race to the bottom. And that's why I shy away from some of the commodity stuff, spatulas or garlic presses or some of those things, because it's really hard to differentiate those things. And it's just a race to the bottom. Barbecue gloves, all those things. I like to go after things where I can truly differentiate and not just be the same size. Or differentiation doesn't mean just changing the color or changing the size. Sometimes it's great to be the best alternative. Sometimes you might have a really good seller, for example, take Hertz rental cars. Maybe they're the number 1 in rental cars, but Avis is the second best. They're the second best alternative, and they're still doing well. You can do the same thing on Amazon. You don't have to be the best, but if you're the best alternative, that can actually work really well for you. And don't always rule out larger items. You'll see people that say it needs to fit under a certain size, weigh under certain pounds, fit in a shoebox, all these different things. I don't believe in any of that. Larger items have great opportunity. Are they a little bit more hassle? A little bit to deal with, a little bit extra in the shipping and storage fees and stuff, but the margins can be tremendous. People selling a $149 item that they maybe buy for $30, they can spend a tremendous amount of money on PPC. They have the margin in there to spend it on the PPC, and they don't have to sell 100 of these a day to make a profit. They can sell 5 a day and make as much profit as someone else selling one of these cheap items that sells 100 a day. So don't rule out those. There's tremendous opportunity in the larger items, the more expensive items, because most people shy away from them. But don't shy away from that. There can be some great opportunity there. Um, and and you don't want to go, when you're thinking of this, you don't want to get stuff that's too hard to ship though. I wouldn't want to be shipping a curio cabinets with all kinds of glass and stuff, and that's going to just introduce a lot of potential problems. So don't overcomplicate it that are too complicated to ship, but you can find stuff that's oversized or higher price that's really, really great products. Also, I like to find things that people are passionate about. If people are passionate about something, it's a lot easier to sell it to them. I don't have to convince them to buy. If it falls into their hobby or their passion, or it's some movement that's going on, those items can be really, really great to sell. You can also consider bundling. Bundling is where you put multiple things together. So, for example, in the past, I sold a 3D fiber lash mascara, and I just make this product stand out. I noticed in the reviews, a lot of women were saying they wish they had a little lash brush. And so I found another factory in China to make a little tiny lash brush, and I included that in the package. With every 3D fiber lash mascara, there's a little lash brush. And that's an example of bundling and differentiation. So when someone's looking at my product, they're like, oh, wow, this one includes a little brush. I'll buy it instead. Those brushes cost me like 8 cents each. It was like next to nothing. But it helped the product, and it made it stand out and made it different. So you can consider bundling or adding something like that. Always make sure you look at the negative reviews of your competition, and you address whatever complaints they're making. I always recommend you look at the negative reviews, and whatever the number one complaint is in all your competition, fix that problem and put that as your first bullet point in your listing that says, hey, this is the only one on Amazon that doesn't do this, this, and this. And that makes it stand out. And always look at sub niches. Sometimes you could find great things in the sub niches where the demand is a little bit lower, but the conversion rates are a lot higher and there's a lot less competition. If you're selling barbecue gloves, which I don't recommend you sell, but let's say you're selling barbecue gloves, most people are selling it for right-handed people, but maybe you're selling the one that's for left-handed people that have small hands. That's like a sub niche of a niche. If you can drill down into some of these like deeper niches, there's some tremendous opportunity where the keyword demand might not be as high, but the conversion rates are approaching 50% or higher, and you can just clean up in some of those sub niches. So that's another area that I recommend that you take a look at. So these are just some ideas for when you're looking at products that you need to keep in mind, and some little tips that will help you out in choosing the right product to sell. And remember, don't get caught up and like hung up on finding a product. Keep these in mind, but once you find something that you're ready to go with it, and get it launched. And don't take 6 months or a year or something like that to just putter around and try to find the perfect, absolute best product ever. Once you find something that meets most of these criteria, or the criteria in the Freedom Ticket test, go ahead and launch it and get this process started. So hopefully this has helped you out a little bit, and I look forward to seeing you in the next module.